and this week we're doing Ask a Ranger. So our first question from our favorite friend Yoda, he asked, how do you become a park ranger? And we're gonna start with that one. So for me, it was pretty easy. I just always have loved being outside and talking to people. I grew up in Eastern North Carolina and went to school at Western Carolina University, where I graduated with a degree in Parks and Recreation Management. And while I was in college, I took classes like whitewater rafting, and I worked in the Smokies, the national park there. I worked with the North Carolina State Park System. I worked at Goose Creek in Washington. And I started with Virginia State Parks in 2009 as a seasonal there at First Landing State Park. From First Landing, I went to Falls Cape State Park and then Twin Lakes State Park, and I have been at Pocahontas since December of 2015. So I just, like I mentioned, just like being outside. I like talking to people. I like learning new things and sharing those things. I'm not a ranger 24/7, and when I'm not rangering, I do enjoy spending time with my family. Keeping my toddler alive has been pretty fun the past couple of years. I also like vintage things, so Pyrex or dresses, and I'm a big fan of bad jokes, and I guess that's it. So I've got some coworkers here. Want to go ahead?
Hi, I'm Rachel, and I'm a native of Prince George, go Royals, but I also attended Coastal Carolina University in South Carolina, and that's where I started with parks. So I worked at Huntington Beach State Park in South Carolina, and we had a nesting beach for sea turtles, so I got really into reptiles, and from there I moved down to the Florida Keys for a little while to work at a sea turtle hospital, and I've been here at Pocahontas for about 2 years now.
Ethan.
And I'm Ethan. I'm from Richmond, so not too far from here. Went to school out in Salem, Virginia at Roanoke College. My background's more in history, so it's a little bit different from the rest of them, being in recs and parks and biology and whatnot. So it was a little bit strange for me to do this. I did AmeriCorps, and that's how I got into the park system at Falls Cape. 2012, and then went to Alaska. If you watched the video about the CCC, I talked about that a little bit. And then about 2 years ago, I get a call, and somebody wants me to be in AmeriCorps here at Pocahontas, and so I did that, and then got hired on. So it was a little bit roundabout way. Things I like to do outside of the park, pretty much just like being outside and hiking and stuff, but also like board games and spending time with friends and things like that. So.
Great. So now you know about us. Let's get to your burning questions. I have my handy dandy notebook. So we've got a few questions. We've had a few questions about bug spray, the best kind of insect repellent or tick repellent. And as my dad always used to say, the best tick repellent is to not wear a wristwatch when you're out in the woods, because the tick, tick, tick of your wristwatch will attract the tick, tick, ticks in the woods. That was a joke. I told you guys that I like bad jokes. But Ranger Rachel, do you have any advice for us about tick repellents?
Yeah, so I find a really good solution of tea tree oil, eucalyptus, lemongrass, and citronella. If you just mix these up, you can actually find all different recipes online for your own eco-friendly bug repellent. Works really well.
Yeah. All right, so another question, it looks like we got from one of my friends back home, is about fungi. And we'll let our fun guy here answer that. Ethan.
Well, some of the best trails to find fungus here in the park it's probably going to be Big Poplar Trail. It does get down into some lower elevations around Swift Creek, so there's a lot of wetland area down there and a lot of fallen trees, so that's a big area for fungus to grow on. Coolest ones that I've seen, not necessarily here, but in general, are earth stars. They're little fungus that are like little puffballs, and when they release their spores, when something steps on them or they're squeezed, and it just up into the air. I just think those are pretty cool myself.
Yeah. questions. We had a question about snakes, and I think that was from Beverly. Beverly, do you know Ranger Haley by any chance? Y'all have the same last name, just curious. But you asked about why snakes are important to have around. Well, I have a friend who once said, without snakes, there'd be no pizza, which I think is pretty interesting to think about. Snakes control rodent populations, and rodents could get into your crops, like your wheat crops and things that you would use to make pizza. So if you don't have any snakes to eat the mice can eat all your crops, and then you have no pizza. Kind of a long way to think about it, and you probably aren't growing wheat in your yard. So Ranger Rachel can give us some tips about how to keep snakes kind of away in your yard.
So there are several myths out there about snake deterrents, such as mothballs and products like Snake Away. These haven't been proven to be very effective. So some of the easier things you could do to keep them out of your yard are directly away from your house, would be to get rid of any places that would encourage snakes. So brush piles, overgrown grass, flower beds. So if you keep these areas trimmed and neat, you're less likely to see snakes right by your house.
Now, what do you think would be one of the most commonly seen snakes around the house or here at the park?
So some of our more common snakes, especially in your yard, is going to be garter snakes, and that's actually our state reptile of Virginia, but also black rat snakes and black racers. Now these two look very similar, but your black racers are typically on the ground, where your black rat snakes you'll usually find higher up in the trees.
And those are harmless, right? Or non-venomous?
Correct. Those are all non-venomous.
Yeah. Perfect. So, let's see here. Someone asked about bears and how to be bear aware. And I think Ranger Ethan is going to handle that one for us. But Ranger Ethan, before we go to you, do you know why the black bear didn't wear shoes?
No, why?
Because he wanted to be barefoot, of course.
Anyway, so we were asked about bears. They're, according to DGIF, bears can be found or have been spotted in most counties in Virginia. They have been spotted in all counties actually, but occupy most of them. Generally, the bears we have here are the black bear, so they're a bit smaller than the grizzlies or the brown bear. If you do encounter a bear, what I've learned is to get as big as you can, put your arms out, get loud, and hey bear, whoa bear, and do that back and forth, back away from it. Do not run away, just because it could think that you are then prey and that triggers something in it. So, like I said, just get big, loud, and back away from it. Also, keep your dog on a leash, because your dog could run up to it and it could cause issues that way. If you're worried about bears in your area or at a park or something, you can always call ahead and see if they've had any bear sightings. Generally, our parks that have had bear will have signs like this, just giving some helpful reminders about what to do to help keep yourself safe and keep our wildlife safe as well.
Yeah, that's great. So, Ethan mentioned DGIF. That is the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. They have an excellent website that talks about bears and all the animals that you could encounter in Virginia. They also have a great PDF of the Living with Coyotes Near Your Home brochure, which is really interesting to read. Just talks about how there are coyotes in Virginia and how you can prevent conflicts and things like that. So highly recommend checking that out. Let's see, some questions. Our favorite insect. That was a pretty easy question for me. When we do our dip netting programs, we're out by Beaver Lake and we are looking for different aquatic insects. We come across water scorpions. You guys ever heard of a water scorpion? Or seen a water scorpion? So honestly, when I first saw one, I was like, that's an aquatic walking stick, because I had no idea. I've never seen one before. But I do have a picture. Can you guys see this okay? It looks like a stick. And it's got some pretty interesting mouth parts. And they are here, and they are sharp. So what this guy does, or this insect does, will use his sharp mouth parts to pierce their prey. So they eat other aquatic larvae, so maybe dragonfly larvae or mosquito larvae. They pierce their prey with those sharp mouth parts and then slurp out their prey's bodily fluids. Doesn't that sound like fun? So Ranger Rachel, do you have a favorite insect? I can show everyone. Do you have one?
I do. So I'm a big fan of dragonflies, and just like the water scorpions, they are also aquatic predators. So we're used to seeing dragonflies in their adult stage when they have wings and they feed on a lot of mosquitoes. But in their larval stage, when they're still in the water, they're going to feed on other types of insect larvae, but they have a really cool way of getting to that prey. So their bottom lip, it actually shoots out. So definitely look up some videos of dragonfly larvae eating their prey. It's really cool.
Yeah. So interesting. We actually, Ranger Hannah, who is our camera person today, she has a favorite insect. It's not an insect, it's an arachnid. So do you guys know arachnid? What kind of animal we're talking about? A spider. Yeah, her favorite spider is an orb weaver, which you might see like kind of like in your garden. It's like Charlotte's Web almost. A lot of times they have the little Z's in the middle of their web. They're called like sewing machine spiders. Lots of different names, but they're big and they're yellow, and that's the female. That's the big one you see is the female, and they do a great job of keeping pesky bugs away. So, speaking of Ranger Hannah, do you want to share some questions that we are getting on our Facebook page?
So far, we've been asked, what is the biggest size of bass we've found here at Pocahontas?
Oh, our biggest bass. Rachel, you are our fisher person. Do you know right offhand?
Not offhand, but usually every year we do have a fishing tournament, and we've gotten some large entries in that. So upwards of 9 to 10 inches.
That's not bad. That's not bad. Oh. Hannah, what's next?
Another one that we just got from John Harris is, what efforts are ongoing to clean up air, oil, and trash pollution in the Virginia State Parks, and what can we do to help?
Great. So we have quite a few different things going on, from our natural resource crews who are out fighting invasive species, from our park volunteers who are still coming out to pick up litter along the way. I think one of the best things to do is to just, if you see litter on the trail, in your yard, just to pick it up. Don't be part of the litter. Don't throw litter out. Rachel, Ethan, do you have anything? I think litter is the big thing, especially like in our pool area near the picnic tables. We get a lot of things that are left over, like juice straw wrappers. Sometimes people leave behind diapers, unfortunately. Rachel, Ethan, again?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. One from Holly Lynn says, why do salamanders lay their eggs in the water?
Why do salamanders lay their eggs in the water? Well, Rachel is not only a reptile expert, she is our aquatic insect expert too. So Rachel.
I do like aquatic insects. Salamanders happen to be amphibians.
Gosh, you're right.
Just like frogs. And salamanders and frogs, they do have to lay their eggs in the water. When those babies hatch out, they have gills. So they are using those gills to breathe underwater like a fish. But in their adult stage, they're going to lose those gills. So they usually move onto land, and then they start to breathe air with lungs just like we do.
Wow. Yeah, sorry about that. A lot of coffee today, folks. A lot of coffee. Did we have a question, did you say, about trees? If we could be a
Yes.
tree?
Somebody,
I like that question.
hold on. Caitlin Green said, if you could be a tree, what tree would you be and why?
Good job, Caitlin. I first was thinking pecan trees, because I just love pecans. But I think I would be a dogwood, just because it's the state symbol. It's the state symbol of both Virginia and North Carolina, and those are two places that I love. So that's what I would be.
I haven't really given this question much thought, but I guess I would go with a palm tree.
Yes.
You have to live somewhere where it's tropical, nice and sunny, and I like coconuts.
There you go. So, Ranger Hannah, do we have time for one or two more questions?
I think we're just about at time, so we have time for one more question.
One more question. Can we do two more questions? Just
Sure.
for fun? Okay, what you got?
Let me see.
We all make sound effects here, folks.
Yeah,
Someone made a
hold
list.
on. Let me check.
Oh,
there's
while
somewhere
we
else.
are looking for questions, I did want to mention that the Virginia Herpetological Society, long name, but they have a great website that can help you identify turtles, snakes, lizards, things that you find in your yard. Highly recommend giving that website a view as you're also looking at DGIF.
I have two. Do you guys want a snake question, or do you want another what it's like to be a park ranger question?
Ethan, what would you like?
It doesn't matter.
Oh my goodness.
All
What
right.
do you choose for us?
We're gonna go with what is your favorite part about being a park ranger, Ethan?
Oh goodness. My favorite part is probably getting to teach people new things and trying to get them outside more. People have fears that are founded with a lot of our animals that are found around here: snakes, bears, skunks, possums, but they all play a pretty important part in our ecosystem that we have around us. So getting people to understand that maybe loosens up their fears. Maybe they, aren't as afraid of snakes, like having kids come in that don't want to touch a snake and then pulling them out and they learn about it, and then and a kid actually coming up and touching the snake. That's really cool. And they're really proud of themselves getting over their fears. So probably like that.
That's great. That's a great thing. We'll do one more question, and I think we're just going to cast the line here and see what we got. Let's see here. Whoa! Oh, I'm trying to catch that bass we mentioned earlier. And I think this question is going to come to us from state park staff. Yep,
Look,
there we
it's a
go.
bluegill.
Whoa, it's a bluegill. Perfect. Two questions. What is your one must-have item you take on a hike with you, and then what is your favorite trail? Two really good questions. I think my must-have item, I don't want to say my camera or my phone, but I do like to take pictures. Maybe food. I like to eat, so food or a map. Oh, that's a really tough question. That's a good one. But my favorite trail here at the park is probably Co-op Trail. One of my favorites. It goes right along Swift Creek Lake, and it's just a really pretty trail. So I think that's all. Rangers, Ethan or Rachel, do y'all have anything to add?
That's it.
I would like to add my favorite, or if I was a tree,
Oh, okay.
wow, it'd either be a white birch, because going up the Main every year, that was the tree that was around, and I really enjoy those, or a red cedar, just because of the smell and that they, kind of repel insects and bugs and stuff like that. So they're pretty hardy trees, and they can grow just about anywhere. So probably one of those.
There you go. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. We can probably answer some more of your questions in the comments at a later time throughout the day. And join us every day at noon, or every weekday at noon, for more Facebook videos from Virginia State Parks. So y'all have a good weekend, and thanks so much. Bye.